All right, so I just got done reading chapter 3 of Jimmy Johnson's book called Swagger. And the chapter is called Wes and Me. And basically, a lot of the chapter is about how Jimmy Johnson developed a relationship with a guy named Wes. Jimmy Johnson and some of his coaches were on a recruiting trip in a high school, and there was only one white kid on the whole basketball. They were going at a basketball game. There was one white kid on the basketball team, and let's say 10 black kids. And there was somebody sitting in the stands, and name was Wes, and he suggested, he found out that Jimmy Johnson, those guys were there on a recruiting trip, and he suggested, hey, you should look at the white guy. He's the best player on the floor. Even though he's out there with 10 black guys, the white guy's the best. And Jimmy looked at him. He played hard. He dunked the basketball, and he figured out, hey, this guy was the best. And so he found out from Wes that the white guy was also a football player. So Jimmy ended up giving the kid a scholarship to Miami, and the kid ended up being a starter and All-American at Miami. And he also went into playing the NFL. And so he developed a relationship with this guy named Wes. Wes came to Miami, helped him at Miami with some players. He talked about how Wes developed a relationship with Michael Irvin when Michael Irvin was there. He helped Jimmy keep Michael out of trouble. They used to have like spades tournaments in Wes's room, and he kept Mike occupied by that. Wes became big in the sneaker industry, in the Nike sneaker industry. Developed a lot of relationships with a lot of different big name players, colleges, basketball athletes, and eventually he became high up in an NBA team, I believe it said in the chapter. Okay, Jimmy also talked a lot about in this chapter about his relationship with different players, especially black players. He was able to develop a great relationship with black players. He just talked about how he never saw color growing up. He had black friends, he had white friends. He'd worked with black people, worked with different types of people, and he just said he never saw color. He always believed in treating people fairly. He talked about how he was very considerate of his players, like the things that they were going through. When some coaches might kick players off the team because they're missing practice, he said he would dig a little deeper, find out why that kid was actually missing. He found out some of the backstories. People in their family were sick. Their parents had died. The kids had to work to help take care of the family, whatever. And he talked about how he gave several kids like that chances, and it ended up being a good thing for him. So Jimmy talks about his relationship with his players, and he talks about his relationship a lot with his black players. I guess it was quoted back in the day that Jimmy was the first black coach ever at Miami University. When he first came there, he talked about how some of the press and everything was worried that he was going to bring in too many black players, because that was kind of like his MO back then or whatever. So that's kind of what this chapter is about. It's about a lot about the guy named Wes, and it's a lot about Jimmy's relationship with his players, and a lot about his relationship with his black players. That's what this is about. Wes and Me, from the book Swagger by Jimmy Johnson. Chapter 3.